Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to my LP run for the game Mega Man 1 on the NES. Today's part we're going to be taking on Elecman. Elecman is the fourth Robot Master in our series, and he is worth 100,000 points. Those points are not worth much in this game, but I always love to just, I think they kind of belong here in a way, you know, it's kind of a novelty thing. Now, the Rolling Cutter is a great weapon to have for getting through Elecman's level. And, of course, it's very useful for taking out Elecman himself. Elecman is one of the rare robot masters that was really overpowered, so you have to have his weakness for beating him. And you shouldn't take on his stage until you have the Guts arm either, because you need that for picking up the Magnet Beam. So make sure you have those weapons before you come into his level. So I'm actually going to take a minute here to talk about the weapons, because I didn't do that in the previous video and what they do. The Hyper Bomb is a very powerful weapon that you get from Bomb Man, and while it is very useful in certain circumstances, it's actually kind of a hard weapon to use for killing enemies, so it's not one that we're going to be taking advantage of very much. Gutsman, of course, gives you the Guts arm, and that's also not very frequently used, but it probably has a much more significant purpose in the game, and the blocks that you can throw with it will do a lot of damage to most enemies, so that's also kind of a nice thing. And then finally there's the Rolling Cutter, and the Rolling Cutter is a good weapon that can take out enemies in tough to reach spots sometimes. It's not as good as the Elect Beam, but it's still a very, very nice weapon to have, and it's going to be a great one, of course, for this level. But this is kind of an interesting glitch. I have had that happen before, where you can pick up multiple blocks and throw them with the Guts arm. I'm not quite sure why that happens, but it is something to be aware of, because that will drain and it will waste weapon energy, so just be careful of that. Really amazes me how much effort and how much detail these early games had. I mean, for a game that's now 30 years old, this looks great. But the later games would be a lot more detailed than the original one was. You know, if you look at this background, it's kind of like a one-color blue. And the later games, of course, there'd be all kinds of things going on in the background. So they really, you know, Mega Man 2, for example, really took that design to another level. Now, just make sure that you use the Magnet Beam here. It's a great way to get around the Guardian, even though it's still tricky to do it. As you can tell, he almost hit me there, but that'll make that part so much easier than trying to fight him, or run underneath him or something. And then now that we're close to Elecman, you want to pull out the Rolling Cutter. We've got one last little part to get through here with these little electrical outlets. It's not real difficult, just try to get close to them, then climb past it as soon as they shut off. Okay, now, so for Elecman, he's very difficult to kill because he can take a lot of health off of you very quickly, and he has a very high level of defense to the Mega Busters, so just basically do what I did there, try to hit him with a Rolling Cutter where possible, and he'll go down in 3 hits to the Rolling Cutter. Elecman will give you the Elect Beam, which is an extremely powerful weapon that we're going to be using in Iceman's stage. Of course, we're going to be taking on Iceman next. Iceman is a really cool looking level, I gotta admit. We're going to be pulling out the Elect Beam here and kind of showing it off a little bit. Pretty much this weapon will waste any enemy in the game, or will at least heavily damage most of them. It can even be used underwater, as you can tell, which makes absolutely no sense, but I'll roll with it because it's useful. Actually, normally I don't have this weapon. You can also use the weapon from Fireman's level underwater, which is pretty cool as well. And that's also a very, very useful weapon that we'll be getting to later on in this part. We're going to take out this turret guy on the bottom with the rolling cutter. I'm going to get on these appearing and disappearing blocks, and this particular puzzle is pretty simple. One down here is a little more complicated, but it's not really that bad. I would recommend, as soon as you take out the turret guy, there we go, that you go all the way to the edge of the screen down here. And you can jump up on this platform right in this area, and you can actually, well, I just fell there, but you can actually get your way all the way to the middle of the screen and then work your way up. So it's pretty simple, just kind of follow the pattern. Then when you get to this one in the middle, make sure you jump again. That'll put you on the top one, and then you can just hop over and you're off. Alright, so this part, this part is a nightmare. Even with the magnet beam, it's hard. If you try to get on top of those helicopter platform guys, good luck. I've died on that so many times. You want to spam this thing and then try to cover as much ground as you can and then spam it again. I don't even know how you get through that part without getting hit, but you know, that must have taken me, I don't know, 6 or 7 tries probably to do it, you know, without dying. So it's very difficult for sure. But anyway, we're through it, and we're going to be now basically on the home stretch. We've got one guardian to get around, and luckily that's pretty easy there with the magnet beam. This part's particularly easy. You can just take these penguins out with one hit, and if you need a little bit of weapon energy or health, you can probably get it from them. Now I'm going to actually show off how hard Iceman is here to kill without his weakness. As you can tell, he does not take very much damage from the Mega Buster. He's quite difficult to kill. I have beaten him before without the weakness by using the Mega Buster, but for this LP, since I'm probably, you know, not good enough in terms of my form to beat him without it, I'm going to just kill him with the Elect Beam. That's the easier way to do that. So, Iceman will give you the Ice Slasher, which is a useful weapon, but more of a platforming weapon. It doesn't really come in handy for attacking enemies so much, but it's definitely going to be very helpful in Fireman's level. And we're going to be taking on Fireman next. You can actually do Fireman first if you want to, you know, get a really nice weapon, but I probably wouldn't recommend it. I think it's better just to do him last, I would say. He has an interesting, you know, looking level with the lava and everything like that, and it's very similar to Heat Man, of course, from Mega Man 2. It always reminds me a little bit of that. Took some damage here on this fire pillar or whatever it is, but that's kind of my own fault there. Ooh, I got hit by those guys. You know, actually, this enemy reminds me a lot of the little fireballs that were in Super Mario. I think it's the same sprite, actually, from the second Super Mario game. I know I've seen those before. And the bullet bills are also from Super Mario, so it's like they reused some of the enemies from the Mario games in this, which is kind of different. I don't normally see that. Now this is where the Ice Slasher really comes in handy if you freeze these in the correct way, which I didn't do it right that time either, so we'll just use the Magnet Beam here. But normally you can freeze them in the right way, and you can make the platforming a lot easier in Fireman's level. Of course, if you do him before Iceman, you won't have that option. So it does pay to probably, complete Iceman's level first. Although still getting around most of these isn't really that big of a deal. This part's also really tricky to get through because it's so easy to get knocked into the lava going through here. So I never played Mega Man 1 when I was growing up. At least not until I was maybe about 12 years old or something like that. I played it on a ROM. I never owned the game, at least growing up. I actually owned the second game. I got that when I was, I think, 3 years old, and always wanted to play the original, but I never could find it anywhere. It was really rare. Like when I was a kid, I used to get a lot of my video games from older relatives, or sometimes you'd get them from like a video store or something like that, and they never had it at the video store, or if they did, it was always checked out and you couldn't find it. I do remember the other games, like Mega Man 3, Mega Man, I think 5 and 6 they had at the video store, but I could never get them, they would always be gone, so I'd always be like, oh shoot, I want to play this game, and I couldn't do it, it kind of sucked, but it's cool now, I get to play them all today. All the ones I wanted to check out when I was a kid. So this is Fireman. Fireman is pretty simple. He just shoots these fire waves off very quickly. He's a hard boss to kill without getting hit, I will admit that. But if you shoot the Ice Slasher quickly, get a couple hits on him real fast, you shouldn't have any trouble beating him unless you have very low health. The weapon that he gives you is fantastic. It creates a fire wave around you, and then it also shoots out a fireball, and it's a very powerful weapon. Alright guys, so in our next part we will be taking on Dr. Wily Level 1. I want to thank you so much for watching my LP run of Mega Man 1 for the NES, and I will see you next time. This is Josh Dragon, signing out.